Remakes are all over the place nowadays, leading to people debating if some are even necessary, due to the generational jump becoming smaller and smaller with each passing console. Like, does The Last of Us need a remake when the PS4 remaster still looks good and can be played on PS5? Same can be said about Resident Evil 4 Remake. I'm not saying that these remakes are bad or a waste of time. Please don't think that and get mad at me. I will cry. Just look at the Metacritic score for RE4R. It is clearly a very good game, more so than any other form of media. I believe that video game remakes are the most justified. You can't slap an old Sega Saturn game on a PS5 disc and have it work. You can take a movie that was originally released on Laserdisc and slap it on a Blu-ray very easily. But some video game remakes are more justifiable than others. With all these remakes and remasters flying around lately, I've been thinking about them a lot, trying to figure out the types of games that we should be remaking. Let me know what remakes you guys want to see down below. One thing I see a lot of people say is that we don't need to remake good games. Just port the original because it still holds up. Amazing point. A great remaster can do a good job of introducing a classic to a new audience. That's the main reason why I don't want a Kingdom Hearts 1 remake. The original still holds up and is very accessible on modern hardware. I would rather that Square put those resources into something else, like remaking 358. A game that is on the same collection but is only a movie. I brought up Resident Evil 4 earlier for a reason. It is one of the most ported games of all time. Realistically, it doesn't need a remake. This only 4 on the GameCube release is the biggest lie in the industry. But remakes and remasters exist on this weird spectrum now that I'm not entirely sure how to define. Thanks to games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and, funny enough, Resident Evil 2 Remake. I don't know why Metroid Prime and Crisis Core are considered remasters when Thousand Year Door is considered a remake. And I'm definitely not alone in not being able to figure that out. On the most extreme end of a remake, I believe the game must be a significant reimagining that doesn't replace the original, but expands on it, or does things that they couldn't have done or didn't do in the original. For those types of remakes, I feel like any game is eligible as long as it's more than like 5 years old. But for regular old remakes, I have one issue with the just port great games, don't remake them line of thinking. Not saying this is everybody, but a lot of the time whenever I see that line of thinking, it's followed by, we should be remaking bad games. I am sorry, are you itching for a remake of Drake and the 99 Dragons? Or would a fully realized version of Ride to Hell Retribution be enough for you to give it a shot? Those games would bomb super hard again. There's some people out here begging for a Superman game. A Superman 64 remake would be a giant screw you. I see the thought process behind it. Sometimes a game is ruined by a publisher being dumb, or something happened along the way that resulted in the original intent for the game never happening. So remaking a bad game gives it a chance to live up to its unrealized potential. I would kill for a Final Fantasy 15 remake that is Nomura's original intent for Versus 13. And that might be Verum Rex. The main issue is that games take too long to make and cost too much money to take a bet on Aliens Colonial Marines Reloaded. In my opinion, there are very few subpar games that should be remade. I've heard very mixed things about the first Witcher game, but considering where the series is now, remaking it will work out well for them. Which leads me to my current headspace when it comes to remaking games. We should be remaking amazing games in series that have completely fallen off. I'm alright with the Dead Space remake more so than Resident Evil 4 and The Last of Us for this very reason. Much like the other two, the original is a great game that is playable on modern hardware. Despite that, this remake has more of a reason to exist. It's a very good way to test the waters for interest in a new game. Dead Space 3 came out a long time ago, guys. When you've had it as rough as Dead Space fans, a remake of 1 feels good. If this game met internal expectations at EA, Dead Space 4 will get greenlit. Rumors were saying that it didn't and they canceled a remake of 2 due to the lack of sales. But EA shot down the rumors, so who knows if it's true. Let's go back a few years to a proven example of this. Metroid 2 Remake. When it came out, it had been so long since any game in that series, let alone a 2D one. Give us a fun remake so we can remember the good old days. Keep in mind that the previous release was Metroid Prime Federation Force. Metroid was going through it at this point. This game helped save the series. It helped Nintendo remember what makes a good 2D Metroid game. The team that made Metroid 2 Remake, note, I will not be calling it by its official title because I will get it wrong. I cannot remember which one is Samus Returns and which one is The Return of Samus. That team would go on to make Metroid Dread. Remaking that game helped them better understand what makes a good 2D Metroid game. How can one figure out what works in a series? Go back and remake an old game for yourself. Get a feel for what makes it great on the development end. They basically reverse engineered the series. As mentioned with Dead Space, it helped test the market for a new 2D Metroid. Remakes on a smaller scale are cheaper to make than a new game because some of the legwork is already done. It can work as a filler game too, unlike Federation Force. It also lets them try out new mechanics and see what works in a safer setting. If the parrying or aiming didn't work in this remake, I doubt it would have showed up in Dread. Or if it did, it would have looked completely different. The success of this remake proved to Nintendo that this team can make a fun 2D Metroid game that people want to play. Metroid Dread doesn't exist without Metroid 2 Remake. If we get any future Dead Space titles, it is because of this remake. It will be made by this team too. And if we don't, it's also because of the remake. The quality of Dead Space Remake proves that this team can handle the series and that people want to play it. Maybe not that second point though. That's why remakes should exist in the industry. When modern hardware can play a port or a remaster of almost every single game, we should be using remakes to help out great series that have been struggling with their quality, to breathe some life into the old guard. I initially wrote this script over a year ago. It got put on the back burner, and in the second half of it, I was going to go into great detail on 2 remakes that I want. The first one was Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door. And then this happened roughly a week before I was going to film the video. Direct. Dude, I guess I have a video to cancel. But it's fine. I have another hypothetical remake I want to talk about. The second game was going to be Dead Rising 1. Okay, so it's a remaster, not a remake. I don't know how this isn't being called a remake.
You may be thinking, that looks like a full-on remake. We had the same thought.
I would have thought that the PS4 and Xbox One versions were the remaster, but I guess this is a deluxe remaster, a new genre of remaster where you completely redo the graphics and voice acting. Anyways, I believe both of these games perfectly illustrate what I want out of remakes. Both series are far past their prime. Both are great games to pick to remember how to make a game in that series, and both can easily add new content or mechanics to expand for a new entry. Dead Rising hasn't released yet, so we won't know any quality of life changes or new content that will be added to it for a bit. All I know is, do not change the timer. If they change how that works, that is fundamentally messing with the core of Dead Rising. I will be mad. But no matter what, the success of TTYD Remake will lead to a new traditional Paper Mario game. And the possible success of Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster could lead to a new Dead Rising game that isn't a cheap imitation of the original. I'm gonna be honest, boys, I'm gonna be very upset if DRDR sucks. If publishers keep greenlighting safe remakes of good games just so they can charge full price for it again, we are doing nothing for the industry. When porting and remasters are possible for most games, we should be saving remakes for 2 scenarios: for helping revive a struggling series, or remaking at such a large scale. A reimagining, if you will. So happy corporate speak has absolutely ruined that word. Sadly, we need more of the former. They're safer than a new game in the series, both in development costs and trying new stuff. They can test the market for a new game, and most importantly, it can help the devs learn what made a series work before jumping into a new game. Trust me, if we get more remakes like Dead Space, we can see a lot of series return. Do you agree? Think I'm an idiot? Comment down below. Dislike the video if you think that Horizon Zero Dawn remake is real, and subscribe for more content. Dude, that game is the antithesis to everything I have just talked about. Follow me on other platforms if you want. Take care, guys.